So I do have a screenshot that was sent in with this question here. And I guess, I should premise this, before actually diving into this question here, I should premise this that, while screenshots are great, however, I would like to point out that, if your chart has a bunch of lines on it, you really do need to point out exactly to which lines, what line is what. So the description talks about a dashed line and a solid line, and there are dashed lines and solid lines all over this chart. There's shading all over this chart and whatnot, and I have no clue what's going on here. You always got to pretend like you're talking to a fifth grader that knows nothing, about your chart. So, all right, so now let's dive into that. The question here. After a couple of emails back and forth here, I got some clarification on what this range is here. So we can see this orange area range, associated with the orange arrow here in the description, right? So this orange area, this range here is, and I had to get a written description of this to explain it. All right, so here we go. So, the range is drawn in, it's hand drawn in. So the conditions for drawing this range is you need to look back, 16 bars minimum, and then you look at the highs and lows, right, of the last 16 bars. So that's all that range is, looking at the highs and lows of the last 16 bars there. Let's see, what are we on here? We're on a 30-second chart. Okay, I'll have to adjust my chart for that. And then the range basically needs to be, the range, right, between the high and the low, obviously, must be less than 30 points. So it can't exceed 30 points. So 30 points or less needs to be that range. Just a note here, BloodHound is not a measuring stick. Right, it's not a ruler. However, the comparison solver can be used in a very minimal way to check if a distance between two data points is less than or greater than a certain distance. But it's not going to spit out the distance between 2 points. So we're going to use the comparison solver here, to check to make sure that this range is 30 points or less. So, all right, and then the other thing, so basically this dash line, the solid line, which guessing now are these two kind of moving average looking lines here. The clarification I got here is to just use a SMA 14 and an SMA 7 here. So simply put, we just need these moving averages to be pointing down when this range occurs or pointing up when the range occurs. So that's it. Yeah, it's pretty basic. Just, 3 requirements. We need to identify this consolidation, range area here. And then we need 2 moving averages to either be pointing down together or pointing up together. All right, so basically I would consider this kind of a range breakout system. Yeah, this is trying to, it's identifying a range, a range bound market first, and then looking for 2 other conditions here to try and identify a range breakout. Okay, so with that, let me explain my chart here. So I have 2 SMAs on here. So the solid white line is the SMA 7, and the dashed line is the slower SMA 14. And then this other indicator, right, the green and the red, is an old indicator that has almost been superseded with BloodHound here. But this is an old support tool that comes with BloodHound, and it is Chameleon. So Chameleon basically provides price data. So back in the early days of BloodHound, this is how you would get price data, custom price data into BloodHound. So it's not necessary anymore, but it still has a couple of extra handy tools built into it. So for example, it has this look back period. It also has a scale modifier, and you can add or subtract a value off of it as well. And it also, so for the high plot, and the low plot and the midpoint, right, you can notice the wording says bounds. So for the high, this is going to identify, as you can see on the chart here, right, the green lines, you can see it's actually identifying the highest high of the look back period, right? So since the look back period is set to 16, it's identifying the highest high of the last 16 bars. And for the low plot here, or the low bounds, right, it's identifying the lowest low of the last 16 bars. So we can use, right, the high and the low plots here to identify, this range here, looking back 16 bars. So, all right, that's what we have on the chart. So with that, we can start building here. So let's see, let's cancel that. All right, so let's get BloodHound open here. And let's see here. So I'm going to minimize that. All right, so first thing we want to do is, you'll notice it says unnamed up here, right? Since we're starting off with a brand new system here in BloodHound, right? We don't have a file name defined yet. So we're going to go over to the main tab. And here you can see, right, it has an open and a save button here. And we're going to use the save as. Put in today's workshop date. And man, spring is just around the corner. Okay, that looks correct. All right, and so now we can see right on the title bar here, we have our workshop date saved as our file name. And so now anything that we do will get saved to this file. All right, so let's identify, right, this 30. Actually, no, let's do the two easy things here. The easier parts is identifying when the two moving averages are sloping up or sloping down together. So for that, we need two slope solvers right there, a slope solver. Let's grab one here, let's connect that in, and we'll give this a name here. So let's do the SMA 7 first. And so we need to change the input here, right? It's already set, right? Everything defaults to the SMA. And we just need to change the period from 14 down to 7. All right, so let's open the indicator up, and we can just adjust the period down to 7, and we're good to go. And that's it. Let's see, and let's see here. So the solid line is the SMA 7. Actually, let me just make sure. Yeah, that is the SMA 7 and 14. All right. And let's see. Yep, that looks good. Things are not matching up here. Let me check the rules window here. And all right, let's see. All right, yeah, SMA rising. Yeah, default settings are all correct. Let's see, what am I missing? Oh, there we go. Okay, so I just needed to open up the rules window. Yeah, just to get the rules initiated there. Okay, there we go. So now everything's matching up. So, right? So simply put, whenever the solid SMA is rising, we're getting a long output. And whenever it's falling, right, we got a couple bars where it's falling here, it's sloping down, right, we get a short output. So pretty straightforward. Okay, so now we have the SMA 7 done. So now let's just copy that slope solver and we'll paste it right down there. Let's connect that one up. And now we're going to readjust this back to the SMA 14, right? The default period. So let's open up the indicator and put in the 14 period again. And let's open up the rules window there, like so. And then we also need an AND node, right? Because as the rules state, right, the two SMAs, so the SMA 14 and the SMA 7, right, have to be pointing down together for a short, or up together. So we need an AND node. There we go. and then connect the AND node to the result node. And there we go. So now, whenever those two SMAs are both sloping up together or both sloping down together, right, we can see that results there. All right, so that's the moving average kind of trigger there. Now let's do the range here. For that, so I have Chameleon in here just to give us a visual aid. We don't actually need to use Chameleon inside of BloodHound here. We can actually do all of that within the solver itself. And we're going to use the comparison solver, right? Because we're going to compare, right, the range high or the high bounds or the upper, the upper high bounds and the lower low bounds there. All right, we're going to check that it's 30 points or less or tighter, right? Let's connect that in there. So input A, we want that to be price, and we want it to be the high price, right? So input A, will be the high prices or the upper range, and then the look back period, we're gonna adjust that to 16. 16, there we go. And now, right, so when you increase the look back period beyond 2, you now have these processing kind of functions, right? You have this look back processing mode here. And so for the high bounds, we want to track the maximum value, right, of the last 16 bars. Or think of the maximum value, right? The maximum value in this case would be the highest high of the last 16 bars, right? So, right, the minimum value would be, the lowest value, or kind of like, the lowest of whatever price, that you're tracking. It would be the lowest low of that price, that you have set above here. Right? And so input B is just going to be the same, but the opposite, right? It's going to be price, but the opposite prices. So let's set input B to price. And now the prices that we're going to track are the low prices, like so. And again, the look back period is 16. This time, the look back processing is we want to find the minimum value. In other words, the lowest low of the last 16 bars. All right, minimum value. There you have it. Right? So this setup here, inside of the comparison solver, right, or inside the input section here, right, it's doing the same functionality as what Chameleon is showing us on the chart there. Yeah, so this is kind of one of the reasons why Chameleon really isn't used anymore. It's just not really necessary there. But it is kept for backwards compatibility. So, all right, so now we need to go into the output section here, right, and set up the conditions that we're looking for, or the rules that we're looking for here. So we're looking for the high to not really be greater than the low, but actually less than or equal to the low plus 30 points. And let's see here, low. So yeah, that's right. Okay. So a way to think of this, kind of another way of evaluating this is, right, you take the low price, right, and so we have kind of a, right, so that would be the red dashed plot here on the chart, and then you add 30 points to it. And so if the high is less than or equal, right, to this low plus 30 points, then we know that this is a 30-point range or less, right? Because remember, so you're taking the low and you're adding 30 points. So in some cases, right, this low price plus 30 points might actually be above the high price, right? It might be greater than. And if it is greater than the high price, then, then we know that that distance is 30 points or less. So, and we're just going to set the exact same condition up twice. So this needs to be switched to plus. So we're going to take, again, the low plus 30 points again. So, and then hit apply. And apparently it looks like this happens a lot. Well, oh yeah, I am using a range chart, so I guess that makes sense here. Unless the market really takes off. Yeah, maybe with the 10 range. Yeah, it's just never going to happen with the 10 range. So let's switch this over to a 30-second chart, as that screenshot kind of showed us. There we go. There we go. Perfect. So now we can see that there are some times, right, when that range is wider than 30 points here. Yeah, so we can kind of see, right, that what am I on? The NQ here. Yeah, the NQ is a little bit range bound here, right? So the separation, right, between the green and the red plot kind of narrows down, and it's less than 30 points. And then we can see, right, when the distance between the two plots widens, then that's getting greater than 30 points. So, all right, so we have that. And so the last step here, minimize that, is let's connect the AND node in, and then let's connect that comparison solver in. So let's see here. Let's give this a name here. The high less than or equal 30 points from the low. There we go. Something like that. All right. I think that's a good enough name. And there we have it. So let's take a look here. All right. All right. So there we have it. So we can see that the market here is kind of consolidated. So it looks like once we get to kind of this point here, right to this point here, things have narrowed, and then yep, as soon as our SMAs both point up, we get that long signal, and then when the SMAs point down, right, we get the short signals. All right, so there we have it. Pretty straightforward.